I wanted to take a minute today at the beginning of the podcast and say thank you to our sponsor, Huber Engineered Woods. Huber has actually been a sponsor of the podcast since 2020 when we decided to start this little endeavor. Without our sponsors, this content is probably not something that happens. But I think the best part about having Huber as a partner on this is it's an incredibly authentic alignment. Peter, Steve, and I all use Huber Woods. I've been using Advantech Subfloor for coming on probably 21 years now. I've been using Zip System and Zip System with the insulation on the back, the Zip R, since 2013. It's a system that I believe in. That systems approach where things play well together. They have design parameters that allow you to use their system for what you're working on. It works. Their tech support's there. Their knowledge is there. I've never had an issue with their product, and it's a great thing that they've decided to sponsor the podcast. So thank you, Huber Engineered Woods.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Unbuild It podcast. I'm hosting this week. I'm Peter Yost, and the people laughing at me are my co-hosts. That would be Steve Basic.
Hello.
And Jake Bruton.
Good afternoon. Good day.
So I want to start by saying we're not really sure whether this is one podcast or maybe three podcasts, but I've been thinking about...
Wait, right now we're doing one.
Yeah, right now we're doing one.
If we did another one, that would be two.
Where Matters is a topic that I came up with because I would like to talk about climate and how it makes us think about buildings differently, building and designing them, site, and extreme events. And they're all things that, particularly in my work with people from all over the country, these are lenses through which I look at their projects. And so I was hoping to get a builder's perspective and an architect's perspective on how climate affects the building science of our buildings, mostly homes, because we do mostly single-family residential here, but also the context of site and extreme events. So, Steve, I think
Where do you want to start?
I want to start with climate, and because that's the broadest topic, I think, of all. And I wanted to think about and have you guys give your opinion about, well, just how much does climate matter? Because you could say to yourself, yeah, if you apply the building science properly, you will arrive at a project that respects the climate.
So, I guess the first thing that I would do to inexperienced building science person, my question would be, if you were traveling to Minneapolis in February, Honolulu in March, and New Orleans in mid-July, would you pack the same things in your suitcase?
That's a good place to start. That is such a good place to start.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know. My wife packs my suitcase for me. That's what Peter was going to say.
But yeah, so it's like we tend to respond to the climate we go to in our personal effects. And it's not even so much the climate, it's also like the task of what we're doing, right? Because you just went skiing. If you go skiing, are you going to bring heavier mittens or are you going to bring cloth gloves?
Yeah.
Right? So everything outside of our personal world is very performance driven based on where I'm going to be standing in a week, right? But somehow we can build a house in New Orleans, Minneapolis, and Honolulu that all look exactly the same, out of the same materials and the same performance metric.
And does that get us into trouble if we think that we can move higgledy-piggledy from Miami to San Francisco or northern Wisconsin?
I think if we built the right house in New Orleans, that is probably not the same house we're going to build in Minneapolis. It's going to have to respond differently, the moisture load, right? or in a heavier rainy place like Norway. When we were in Norway, we looked it up, Jake and I, we were at this one place where I was like, wow, they said, oh, it rains here a lot. So I looked it up and like kind of getting a comparison. Seattle, I think, was like 40 inches. The place we were at was like 88 inches of rain a year. I was like, that's all it does is rain here.
I think that Juneau, Alaska, which is one of the wettest areas.
One of the most abysmal places on the planet.
Sorry
I
to
think
our listeners in Juneau.
That's all right.
I think it's north of 100 inches of rain a year. And I'll never forget, I was in Juneau because my brother lived in Pelican, which was more on the ocean, about 90 miles west of Juneau. But there was a guy on a job site. It was absolutely raining cats and dogs, and it was a wood frame building. And I went up to him and I said, how do you do this? And he said, this is the only way you can build here. It's always raining. And so I said, well, what things do you do differently? He said, well, first of all, tools are disposable because there's no way you can ask that saw to
last more than a year or so.
Right. It's just the nature of the game. But the most interesting thing was that his nail pouches all had drain holes drilled in them. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, that he had to have water relief and drainage for his tool belt.
You sure he wasn't just using it as a mini cooler? Like he had some little MGDs, the little minis packed in ice?
I hadn't thought of that.
The champagne of tool pouch beer.
There you
go. Where I wanted to start with was why we do climate zones the way that we do. And they're numbered for temperature differences. So temperature must be important. Mm-hmm. But the second part is they're lettered for sort of moisture zones. And I've always thought it was really interesting that we have A, B, and C. And A is wet. B is dry. And then what the hell is C? Well,
never wet.
Well, no. I mean, if you think about it, C is all coastal, and it goes from relatively dry to relatively wet north to south. But the key part of why do we have a C compared to an A and a B is that the temperature is quite mild. And the key to the C zones for me is that they are cold and wet at the same time. So they're sort of Mediterranean in the sense that when the rain comes down, it's colder. And when it's really, really dry, it's warmer. And so that means that the only time homes in those climate zones are heated is when it's wet. And I can tell you plenty of examples of buildings that I went to. It was the fact that they were being heated when they were getting wet, and that they had 6 months of really good drying that completely changed the way that you can build in those environments. Now, that's not true when you go up to the northern sea, where it's cold and wet a lot longer, both in terms of being colder longer and wetter longer. And the other thing is, why do we only have those on the West Coast? Why don't we have C on the East Coast?
Are you going to tell me?
Well, it's the jet stream, right? Driving all the weather systems across the United States. So the Atlantic coast is largely, except for nor'easters, the trailing coast. The head-on is on the Pacific
side. The leeward side.
Exactly, the leeward side.
I didn't think I knew that, did you?
The other thing that my brother Nathan pointed out, which I thought was really cool, was that if you spin a globe right around the mid-latitudes of the United States, the only land that is wet at that latitude is the U.S. Every place else where you go to that latitude, it's desert. And it's because of the Gulf. It's the Gulf Stream. Bringing underneath to the east of the Mississippi a lot of moisture. And that was the breadbasket that our nation was first built upon, because having people come to the East Coast and then migrate across into incredibly fertile land, that was the result of the Gulf Stream's impact on the climate on the eastern half of the United States. So
I didn't know we were going to embark on Lewis and Clark here, but it's okay.
Well, if we're talking about the eastern half of the United States, we're not talking about Lewis and Clark yet, technically.
Well, but so these climate zones are helping with us relate temperature changes with how much moisture we get in these different zones. And so we do have to build. It doesn't mean you don't have to respect water in Arizona, but it means you better be paying a lot more attention up in 4C on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's interesting because in historic terms, we probably have the most litigation over housing than we've ever had. And that's probably going to be true in 5 years, and it's going to be true in 10 years.
You're talking nationally. You're not talking about we like the East Coast or anything. Okay.
Nationally. And part of that, I think, is because we've homogenized our housing. Like, if you want the true answer to your question, let's go and look at houses at the last turn of the century. Not 1900, not 1999, but 1899. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee houses in Florida look different than houses in Hawaii and Louisiana and Montana and New England.
They were much more a response to place.
Yes. And I think it was people migrating there realizing, oh, this climate, I sweat a lot here because it's hot. How do I get in the shade? But then how do I vent this and get rid of that moisture that is in the air? Or how do I learn to tolerate it? Probably not necessarily get rid of it, but how do I learn to tolerate it?
I have a project right now that's bedeviling.
That's good if you're in business.
It's a project that is bedeviling because it was
always has to throw in these words like to embarrass us. Bedeviling.
Well, you buy the calendar, you may as well use the word every day.
It is. That's that one 365 word of the day.
And again, I know what you're trying to do is
it might frustrate the listeners when we try to get you to lose track of what you're saying, but we really both get a kick out of it.
Especially damn it, I can't remember where this is going.
Well, it's a perfect example of a home that is of a particular design that is perfectly suited for climates, 1,000 miles or more south of where it is. And it's just, particularly the roof, it's just really, really, really hard to get this thing airtight because of through beams moving inside to outside. It's just very difficult in a cold climate because wood likes to move. They're big timbers. It's very hard to protect them from moisture changes. And when they move from the inside to the outside of the building, and I've done this with many timber frame builders saying, this worked to move these timbers from inside to outside the building when we weren't insulating them and having such an extreme difference between the indoor environment and the outdoor. But, nowadays it's just, we're going to be patching the air sealing details on this over and over and over again, because when we move from inside to outside the building, they move differently, and there's no way to get over that.
So do you think reliable electrical grid and having natural gas at every city lot in the country has allowed us to completely negate the things that we knew in 1880 about, or a lot of the things that we knew, where we just, Lewis Carrier makes the house comfortable. It doesn't matter what the design is.
I think that's definitely part of that homogenized tactic. I think part of it is production builders. What was that first production, Lewiston or whatever it was?
Oh, the Levitt. Yeah.
When you get builders like Pulte Homes that's building in every major city in America, I think
they can't respond to place and be profitable.
No, and they respond to the fact that this year we are going to buy, 500,000 heating systems or 400,000 heating systems. So where am I going to get it? Who's going to give me the best price? And how are we going to use that in the house rather than...
It's funny because that technology of production homes was sort of a result of World War II and a lot of changes in materials that allowed us to make stronger boats, out of plywood, as opposed to other wooden boats.
I mean, as much as we would hate war, I would argue war is probably one of the best technological advancers out there. Because money doesn't matter. What matters is the solution, and we need it fast.
Yeah.
And so we always, it seems like after war, for good or bad, not that I'm not trying to be a warmonger. I'm just saying, it's like when you look at it, the technology that comes out of war, right? Like it advances very, very quickly.
So I brought this topic up because I would like those that listen to the podcast to respect the differences in climate. I'll give an example. The codes started with, we're going to move all climate zones down to a 3 ACH 50. And what have we done? We've said that 5 ACH 50 is okay in climate zones 2.
Yeah.
That is the most asinine approach to...
How do you really feel about that? Because I'm bedeviled.
Well, what I was going to say is I can tell you where to stick that opinion. Reference to a previous podcast. Because I have a client in the Texas coast built at 1 ACH 50 air tightness, and he's got to be really, really careful about moisture infiltration from exhaust fans, right? Because if you run an exhaust fan in a cold climate and you depressurize the building, that's a moisture protection action. If you do the exact same thing down in coastal Texas, you're going to be pulling in moisture-laden air because the moisture is coming from the outside in, not the inside out. And so, you got to respect the climate. And that the code doesn't do that. The code says, because it's a milder climate in terms of temperature, we're going to back off on the air tightness of the building. It just doesn't make any sense.
But it doesn't take into account the letter.
Yeah. The letter. It does not take into account the letter, that's climate zone A.
But shouldn't you manage energy and moisture with equal intensity?
There's a little tear trickling down my cheek, Steve, of course, because of that.
So what do we do to get people to respect it? What do we do to make builders or architects or design teams to take it more serious?
I do think there's a good reason that Joe Lstiburek wrote climate field guides, recognizing that the building science, it's not that the building science changes from a climate to climate, it's that the application of the building science changes. So, Steve, this gets back to your, teach them to fish, as opposed to just giving them bait. And so I don't know how we do a better job of getting that information about the impact of climate, and it doesn't change the building science, it changes the application of it. But certainly having climate guides that recognize that. And, this was one of the great things about the Building America program was that when I first started to work for Building Science Corporation, I had never flown across the country and said, now when I go to Southern California off the coast where it's just bloody hot and dry, I've got to figure out how to apply the building science because the Building America program was for production builders from all climates. So the fact that Joe was able to do guides in all the different climates was in part because we were working in all the different climates.
Right.
And I think production builders were, it's interesting. Production builders are national builders, but the divisions were in particular climates, right? So we worked with production builders for, say...
But even those divisions, even though they're working in different climates, they're still kind of homogenizing. Like, we're building wood houses where wood doesn't even exist, like forests don't exist.
Yeah.
Right? Down in New Mexico or Arizona.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. So we're bringing that wood in to build wood houses. And instead of adobe or something that was more responsive.
It feels silly that I'd never even considered that before, just because I don't build in those places that they're building with materials that don't even exist there.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Did you know when Frank Lloyd Wright had his school in Taliesin and you were a student, your first task was to go out in the field and build an environment that you would live in for like the next 60 or 90 days?
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty incredible.
The other thing I didn't know about that was that there was a school in...
Taliesin West.
Taliesin West.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was a Taliesin East.
Spring Green, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin? I think it's Spring Green, I think is the name.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah. That's where like the curator hacked his wife with
Wasn't
a
he kind of running away from controversy? Yeah. He was kind of running away.
Yeah.
I don't know that story. That's...
Yeah. There's some gruesome tale that like the landscaper curator like murdered his wife with a hatchet or something. It was really... Yeah, like it's a story like, holy crap, no way. Like you're making, it's like, it's...
And this was
out there.
Taliesin East?
No, that was up in, Wisconsin or something. I don't know. There's a story I don't quite remember.
That'll be in Pete's resources.
It should be in your resources.
Documentary about
I'll have to look that one up.
murders at Taliesin.
But it is interesting that people, like, some people won't even acknowledge that fact. Like, you live here, you wear different clothing, but yet you build the house.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take that a little bit further because I think that analogy's amazing, but I think the other thing that people don't really take into account is that part of the year you wear one thing and part of the year you don't wear that thing too.
Right.
And I feel like...
Depending on where you live.
Yeah, certainly.
Because Honolulu is arguably... Or San Diego.
Kind of the same year round.
San Diego, it's pretty much the same. But it's also probably one of the most forgiving environments. So not only do you have temperature and moisture, but there's places in the country that are very forgiving. And there's places that will hit you with a hammer.
So that's a great segue because...
Well, I didn't want to interrupt him. We have to let him finish. Hold your thought.
I mean, really quickly, like the acknowledgement of seasons and among the location is a big one too, that like I feel like where I build is a very easy place to build. We don't get that much rain. We don't get that much cold. We don't get that much hot.
Well, it's easy because you understand.
But we do get rain. We do get cold. We do get hot. We do get a little bit of standing snow that we have to deal with. Like we do get a little bit of everything. So we do have to understand all of those things.
But it is because I think because it's easy for you to understand it. It's like saying someone from Guam trying to understand what a snowsuit is. Mm-hmm. Right? They have. And I've been on Guam. It is one of the most horrific environments for all of our listeners in Guam. I'm sorry, but I have never been any place where I have a hard time breathing because it was so humid.
I'm forwarding you all the emails we get from Guam.
That's right. That's right.
Well, what I was going to say is that, there are places in the United States where the difference between the indoor and outdoor environment is small enough that you could say, to hell with your numbers, to hell with your letters, this is paradise. Wildfire. There's places in the United States where the most important thing that you have to consider in terms of the way the building's going to operate is extreme events. It doesn't have anything to do with climate.
This sounds like another podcast.
Well, we could do it like a
1
teaser.
2 3.
Yeah. Well, so one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because I thought that when I was just considering the climate differences, that I could go and do consulting for building science in any part of the United States. And then I had a client that said they were moving to Brattleboro from the Pacific, kind of the not the Northwest.
People's Republic, by the way.
Solely because of the health problems they were having with their 2 kids from wildfire smoke in their home. And they said, we don't want to move, but we have absolutely no idea how to protect our kids in terms of wildfires. And this was not wildfire smoke that was for a month or 2. This was like 6 months at a time for them. So they actually moved all the way across the United States simply to be not in an environment that could be threatened by wildfire. Now, little did they know that we could get fires across all of Canada that brought that smoke right in.
Yeah.
But
or in Greece, so it would blow all the way across.
Yeah. So I think we should do a separate podcast on extreme events, because in my consulting, I'm constantly not just doing climate, I'm doing site, and that's a whole different conversation. And then extreme events. I never thought I was going to have to add those two to what I had learned at Building Science Corporation, which was largely about the climate zones and how we, manage moisture and energy differently based on those. And I think what's kind of interesting about this too is that there is a historian who has, I don't know the name of the book, but has said there will be migration in the United States. We've had all these people move to the South, particularly the Southwest. And it's going to get so hard to live there because of climate, but also lack of water, that there's going to be people moving back north. And the Northeast in particular, because it is the least threatened by extreme events. You don't really
and
have.
It's probably one of the easy, like the Northeast, I always viewed it as probably one of the easiest places. Like if we had a huge, national catastrophic event, the Northeast is probably one of the easiest places to live through something like that.
Well,
because we have water and a lot of resources.
But who would have thought that the oldest, there are no production builders in the Northeast. Why? Because it's the oldest part of the country in terms of structures. It's going to be
land.
There's no new track house developments going up.
Right, but when people start to respond to both climate and extreme events, there is certain areas of the United States that are not particularly attractive right now that may become a lot more attractive because of the impact on these in terms of just quality of life.
Yeah.
So this one was, and I'll put some resources on because we have really, really good resources, particularly because of the Building America program for climate-based design and construction. And then coming up in a future podcast, we're going to do site and extreme events.
Yeah. So stay tuned for more when the elderly get paranoid.
Wow. All right, you
Sorry,
ready?
I was sitting on that one for a minute.
2, 3, 4. Count to 10 before you respond.
I love you, buddy. Sorry.
Well, this has nothing to do with your topic, but I've recently come to understand how they make holy water. You know how they make holy water? I mean, you grew up in a parsonage.
I'll let you tell it.
We don't have holy water in the Protestant.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Damn. What kind of bedeviled society are you? Anyways, you know how to make holy water?
I do not.
You boil the hell out of it.
Again, he got a laugh from our editor in the background.
Come on, that was a good one.
He's going to have to start
boil the hell out of it.
Miking the camera guy so that he can get a laugh.
Yeah. That is, I hate it. I hate the fact that I like them. I hate the fact that all the listeners like them.
I like them deep
I
down.
love them.
I like to give them crap about it.
Thanks for listening. Send all your questions
It's
to...
funny how you say, thanks for listening, and then you get like lean in front of the camera to hide me.
Questions at unbuilditpodcasts.com.
Oh, as they switch cameras.
Until next time, have a good day.
Bye-bye.